Hello, everyone. My name is Reese Garlinski, and this is Where You Want to Be, where I take you with me around the world to the places I've been and the knowledge I've accumulated to help you find your place within the world we live in. We cover history, we cover travel, we cover some of the great moments in history, the terrible ones, and everything in between to help you understand these places I've been lucky enough to travel to and the world in general. Today, we are covering Kraków, which is the most historical city in Poland. And before I do the history of that city and any city, I always like to kind of talk about the etymology of the name of the city and then some cool facts about it. So to start, the etymology with Kraków starts with a legend. This legend refers to a man named Krakus. Krakus was the man who founded the Vistulians, which were a people group that lived near the Vistula River and were the predecessors to the Poles, the Polish people. After founding this area, they named the area after him. Literally, Krakstown, the name is Kraków, named for the leader, Krakus. And now that we've covered the etymology, I'm going to give you guys some cool facts before I roll right into the history. To keep with the theme of legends and things that happened in the mythological history of Kraków, we're going to talk about the castle and the dragon. An old legend suggests that there was a dragon's den under the great castle of Kraków. This dragon was allegedly so strong that no arrow or sword could pierce its hide. But a cobbler was actually able to defeat this dragon. This cobbler filled a sheep full of sulfur and spices, and this dragon ate this sheep because it was a big, plump meal, and choked heavily and dehydrated from all the spices and sulfur that it flew to the Vistula River and drank itself dry, literally drowning itself out of water. Too much water ended this dragon, and now because of this, there is a statue of Smokey the Dragon outside of the castle in Kraków. Another fact is that the biggest Old Town Square in all of Europe lies in Kraków. This is because of the fact that Kraków managed to do different things in its history during the Second World War, which we'll get into soon, to protect this area, and it survived World War II, which didn't happen anywhere else in Poland and across much of Europe because of how violent this conflict was. And the final fact for you guys is about a song that plays from the massive St. Mary's Basilica. This song is called Hejnał Mediaki and is a famous salute just to the history of Kraków, and it plays every hour from St. Mary's Basilica. It's very loud. It can be heard throughout the entirety of Old Town Square and is a famous part of coming to visit Kraków. You see this, you see the Basilica, and you hear this song, and it's important. But most people are shocked to hear that the song kind of abruptly cut short. It sounds like something's wrong with the sound system and that they don't finish the song. The reason for this is that in the history of the song actually being made and when it was performed, a performer who was playing an instrument was actually shot with an arrow by a Mongol invader right at the end of a song. Mid-note, he was playing and was shot and passed away from this arrow. Because of this, every time they play the song, every hour from St. Mary's Basilica, to honor this trumpeter that died, they cut it short. Mid-note, the same way he passed away, they cut the song short to symbolize a kind of memorial for this attack that happened and the fact that this person died in the middle of making music that is still heard to this day. And those are the facts I have for you guys. There's so much more to get into with Kraków. There's so much more to talk about, both random cool facts-wise and culture-wise. But today we're here to talk a lot about the history. And I'm going to give you guys a survey of the history to kind of whet your palate before you dive into deeper history of Kraków, which you can also do with other content I've created. We'll get into that later. But with that being said, I'm excited to talk about this city. I was very lucky to visit here, and I do think it is probably the prettiest part of Poland I went to. I thought the city was brilliant. Just the way it's all laid out is gorgeous. Super underrated, not only in the Polish scale, but just on the scale of countries in Europe. Cities in Europe, excuse me. And I'm very glad I get to talk about it. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for being here. And one more time, my name is Reese Garlinski. This is Where You Want to Be. And these are my traveler's notes on the great southern Polish city of Kraków. You guys enjoy. Our origins begin with people that have been living here for millennia. But it wasn't until the current era, or CE, that things become more traceable. The area where Kraków is today housed the Vistulians, who are a people with the ancestral DNA of the Poles. The area was Malopolska, Little Poland. It took up a large area of what is today southern Poland. When the Vistulians arrived, it's hard to pin down, but it was at some point during the Great Slavic Migration from around 500 to the end of the 800s CE. Most likely, the Vistula got to Poland in the 700s because many different writings mentioned them in this period. Between 988 And 990 CE, Mieszko I, the Prince of Poland, united the southern and northern provinces. Boleslav I, the Brave, son of Mieszko, made the city the seat of the Polish bishopric. Of course, the long history of Catholicism is still very present in Poland. It is one of the most stoutly Catholic nations in all of Europe. And at this time, the bishopric was very important to act as a governing body. The same was present in Lyon, France, where having a bishop was as important as having a very powerful prince. If you had someone who was very significant to the religion, you had sway, and this is why this area had influence. So after this, the city expanded to become a trade center and then the capital of the Polish Principality in 1138. Invasions hit this area very hard after the 1100s. The Tartars, who were a diverse Turkic people group, led massive invasions of Western Europe in the 1200s, and Krakow was severely affected by these attacks. These are a sort of mixed descendant of the Mongols, and this is a reason that song is played from St. Mary's. It was around this time when that trumpeter was pierced with an arrow and it interrupted his song, which is still commemorated to this day. After this long period of different invasions, in 1320, King Vladislav I reunified Poland when he was crowned. In this same year, he named Kraków the capital of Poland, which it maintained for a very long time. From this point forward, Polish kings were crowned in the Wawel Castle. Kraków was predominantly the political center of Poland and was a trade center for Europe by connecting the east to the west. Another thing that was very important in this history was the formation of the Jagiellonian University, which was founded in 1364 by King Casimir the Great. It was renowned for the quality of its education for centuries to come. And even today, it is one of the oldest universities in the world that is continuously running in Europe. By the 1600s, the dynasty ran by this long line of Polish Vistulan kings finally started to wane. The Vasas started to take real power. King Sigismund III Vasa moved the capital to Warsaw, and Krakow fell from relevancy. Trade shifted to Warsaw, and so did all the influence of the nation. What followed was a long period of different interventions. There was a war with Sweden, which was not pleasant for the Krakowians, and an anti-Russian insurrection happened in 1794 as the Russians crept in with the partitions that were starting to hit Poland. These partitions started to hit their hardest in 1795. Weak and divided Poland was partitioned by Prussia, Austria, and Russia. Austria took most of southern Poland and gained control of Krakow. This lasted until 1809, when Poland was swept into the Napoleonic Wars. Napoleon established the Duchy of Warsaw, which remained as a political entity until his final fall in 1815. After his final defeat, the Congress of Vienna declared Krakow as a free city that nobody could lay full claim to. This led to the Republic of Krakow being formed as an independent unit. The Republic of Krakow was a protectorate of nations like Russia and Austria so that peace could be maintained between the powers. Krakow was the most important city for Polish culture during this era because it had that independence to do things that very Russified and heavily controlled areas like Gdansk, which was known as Danzig at this time under Prussia, and Warsaw, which was under Russia, was facing Russification. This area maintained a lot of Polish songs, culture, food, because it had this kind of weird protected independent status. In this time, things were interesting in Krakow. Because of the fact that it was managed militarily by other powers, it meant that a lot of trade did flow through here, but not for actual goods made by Krakow. Volumes and volumes of trade went in, but the actual manufacturing industry wasn't developed by people living here, not done by Krakowians. But things were still done in this era that still had a very important effect on the later history of Krakow. One of them was a law that was passed in 1815 to make Jews legally equal to everyone else in Krakow, giving them rights. Once they fully became a citizen, that would give them voting rights, representation rights, and the rights to worship as they pleased. But the path towards citizenship, much like modern-day Poland, was not an easily achieved feat. The only way to become a citizen was by relinquishing Jewish practices and traditions to assimilate into Christian culture. So it was only in rare cases that people were actually able to worship freely in Krakow. They had to eventually wait this out and get that right much later on. And Krakow acted as the capital of partitioned Poland up until the redevelopment of the real Poland once World War I ended. In 1830, there were many Krakowians who participated in the November uprisings that happened across Poland for greater representation and cultural identity. Russians occupied Krakow, and then 3 years later, the 1833 Constitution came out. It stripped Krakowians of many rights they previously held. Austria, Prussia, and Russia all agreed to back each other in any case of a Polish uprising. And now we're going to jump to the end of World War I. In 1918, Krakow was returned to Poland as part of the post-World War I negotiations. There was a great national pride that came from this reunion, but it only lasted for 21 years because World War II began. Germany started the war in Danzig, Poland, then known as Danzig. Kraków was taken by the Germans early in the war, and Wawel Castle was used by the German governor as an HQ. Over 55,000 Jewish people were sent from Kraków to the worst camp there was during this horrible period, which was Auschwitz, and can now be visited today to see the horrors of what was done here in Camp Auschwitz from Kraków. This camp was the reason that 1 million people lost their lives in the 5 years it existed, a vast majority of them being Jewish people taken from Poland. The Soviet army liberated Kraków from the rule of this German army in 1945. Kraków suffered far less destruction than other Polish cities because it surrendered without a fight to Nazi Germany. The hard reconstruction of Poland after the war made many Poles resent those living in Kraków for their lack of resistance. So the story of why the medieval square here, Old Town Square, is so well protected and preserved is because unlike the rest of Poland, which had the Warsaw Uprising, and Danzig, which had to face the first attacks from the Germans, this place didn't fight at all. The Krakowians did not rise up, despite a history of being strong and being where the heart of Poland was, the capital, the culture. They didn't stand up against this party that came in and these people that came in with horrible intentions to hurt their people. They threw their hands up and said it's okay. So the rest of Poland, even today, makes jives in a less serious sense, but still with the truth that this is kind of full of people that give up, people that didn't try for the greater idea of Poland when it came down to it in the Second World War. In the post-war period, Soviet-backed Polish governments in Kraków were focused on rebuilding the economy through different things, such as textile milling, chemical production, food processing, and stone cutting, especially with the fact that nearby salt and limestone deposits were so present here. On top of this, they also got into building an actual industrial hub and making factory workers very present in this area. This led to a change in the overall trajectory of where Kraków was going, being one of the cities that represented independent Poland to kind of being under the rule of the Germans, and then leading into a very rough Soviet era, which did turn out to build a lot of the industries that are still present today. And as time went on, the university, Jagiellonian, eventually was reopened, funded once again, and continued to be one of the most important universities in all of Europe. And all of that brings us to the present, where Kraków remains a vibrant culture hub. Today, Kraków is as beautiful as it is historic. Hundreds of historical spots dot the city, from statues to basilicas to sites where kings stood, where they lived, to areas where salt mines are. Just all sorts of things that contributed to Krakow's development and its history as a Polish capital can be found in this city. The city has stood the test of time, despite dodging the hardest parts of it, and represents Polish culture better than almost anywhere else because of how long it has held on to its ancient traditions and its history of Poland that has been much less affected than different parts of the country. To me, this was the prettiest city I saw in Poland, and we'll get into why as we talk about the different historical sites and beautiful things to see here in this city and how they got here. Our first site is Rynek Główny. Krakow's main market square is one of the largest medieval squares in Europe and a central landmark of the city. It was established in 1257 as part of the city's medieval urban plan. It became the heart of commerce, social life, and different political events in Kraków. The key features of the square include the Cloth Hall, which is a hub for trade existing since the Renaissance. Over the centuries, this area has witnessed significant historical events from royal leadership and births, deaths, coronations, as well as thousands and thousands of people throughout different eras. Today, it remains a very significant cultural hub and tourist center, which is filled with cafes, food spots, areas where people are selling things, just like the merchants that helped build it way back when, in 1257. The next one is St. Mary's Basilica. It is one of Poland's most iconic Gothic churches, located in the main market square. Its history dates back to the 1200s when the original church was built, but it was later reconstructed in Gothic style during the 1300s after being destroyed by invasions from the Mongol Tartars and other powers. The basilica is renowned for its two asymmetrical towers, the taller one serving as the city watchtower. It is also famous for the music it plays, which is the one about the trumpeter that I mentioned since the start of this video. Inside of the church, there is a stunning altarpiece of Vistula, a masterpiece of late Gothic art created in the late 1400s, and over the centuries, St. Mary's Basilica has continued to be a symbol of Krakow's significance, both in history as a heart of Catholicism in Poland and as the capital of Poland. The final site is Wawel Castle. It is one of Poland's most significant historical landmarks. Perched on the top of Wawel Hill, it served as the royal residence and political center of Poland from the 11th century to the 16th century. The castle's current form reflects various architectural styles, Influences from the Romanesque, Gothic, Renaissance, and Baroque periods can all be seen here. This is due to centuries of expansions, renovations, and rebuildings that were necessary after different wars and invasions. This castle became the seat of Polish kings during the reign of Casimir III the Great in the 1300s and flourished as a Renaissance palace under King Sigismund I the Old in the 1500s. After the royal court moved to Warsaw in the late 1500s, Wawel Castle lost its status but remained a symbolically important part of Polish history. During the Austrian occupation of the 1800s, it was used as a military barracks. After this, restoration began in the 1900s, transforming it into a museum and symbol of Polish history, culture, and royal power. Today, Wawel Castle is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and houses art collections, royal chambers, and historic treasures, reflecting the rich history of the Polish people living here and all the culture it took to get it to where it is. And now that we have done some of the history for different sites here in Kraków, I'm going to give you my traveler's tips for coming here, and we'll keep this thing rolling. The first is about bagels and donuts. Polish bagels and donuts will be served everywhere in Old Town Kraków, and you should indulge in them well and often. The bagels can be as common as the ones sold in carts in Old Town, or more fancy ones made right in front of you at different Polish and Jewish-owned bagel shops across the city. But either way, enjoy as you please. One of the famous ones is abwarzanek. It's kind of a bagel-shaped dough ring you'll find in the stands and is very accessible and cheap. It's nice and crunchy and an easy snack as you're walking through St. Mary's and the Old Town Square. Bagels at Bagel Mama are becoming a favorite for tourists and locals alike as this new style is starting to gain traction. The famous Polish donut served here is called a paczki, which are fluffy and filled while being brushed with sugar. The best are at Michalak Bakery for award-winning ones, and Gorshe Paczki in the area of Szwedzka have freshly made ones throughout the day. The Barbican in Gajah Sakti. For only a couple bucks in Polish zloty, you can take yourself on a tour of this preserved fortification called the Barbican. The Barbican was once one of the mighty fortifications in Kraków. It was built in the late 1400s as a defensive stronghold protecting St. Florian's Gate. It has artilleries which triggered a lot of the defensive systems that are now present in different historical sites across Kraków. Nowadays, it is just a historical site, a landmark of the city of Kraków and tourist attractions for those to come see. It represents a time in Poland when Wawel Castle needed to be protected, and this was one of the fortifications that did it. When we were there, it wasn't open to visit the interior, but I stopped in for a few pics and admired the construction that has been standing here for more than 500 years. When you're in the area, you should definitely check it out as a cheap little side quest to do as you explore this whole area. And of course, my number one recommendation is just to get lost in the famous Old Town. To me, it was the prettiest and most in-depth Old Town in Poland. There was such a great contrast of different buildings to each other, and the landscape was amazing. There's lots here to see and do across Krakow's Old Town outside of just buying overpriced food and having a walk around the different markets. Don't miss the massive shop in the middle of the Reniek Square, which sells a lot of different goods, including that amber I mentioned in the Gdansk episode. Amber washes up a lot on the shore of Gdansk, and it even gets sold here in really high quality quantities at this market. But do be wary of those that are selling cheaper versions of it. You can test them in different ways. And this area has been open for many an era and is one of the most common spots in the city. This whole area is just incredible. And of course, when I say go to Old Town, I also mean take a trip to Wawel Castle. It's necessary as part of seeing just the whole Old Town area. This whole part of Kraków is well contrasted by the development of different modern stuff across other parts of the city. So really diving deep and just having a good time walking around, eating, snacking, seeing, taking in the Old Town is truly fantastic, and I recommend each and every one of you do it if you do get the chance to go to this town. And now that we have covered an abridged version of the history, talked about some of the coolest sites in their history here in Kraków, and I've given you my suggestions for what to do when you come to this city, that is going to be the end for me. As always, I'm very glad you guys listened to this, and yeah, this is going to be the end of the Polish series I do for now, just because this was the last area of Poland I was lucky enough to visit, and I loved it. Getting to go to this country that I have a lot of roots in from my family, last name being Garlinski, Polak over here. It was important to me, not only to cover the history well, but to just cover the people and what I saw and everything here as well as I could. So I was very lucky to go here. I'm even more lucky that I get to share this kind of thing with you all and that you choose to watch this with me. So just another thank you for coming and listening, and going to wrap this up. If you guys are interested in any more history, I covered both a longer form of Krakow's history and the greater history of Poland, both in the Young History podcast. And I've done just greater things for Eastern Europe, the region. I've done cities I visited before this and the rest of the cities I visited after. Those will be coming out soon as well. So if you have anything you're interested in this realm, I'm your guy for that. So if you liked it, please go ahead and like. If you want to subscribe and see more, please do. But with all that being said, my name is Reese. This is where you want to be, and those are my traveler's notes on Kraków. Hope you guys enjoyed, and you have a good one.